What's the scariest thing you can think of? Is it vampires, zombies, going to the Olive Garden, and then when you ask for unlimited breadsticks, they say, actually, we don't do that anymore? Well, how about aging? Because I'll be honest, guys, I'm starting to really reflect on what aging means. I don't feel super old or anything, but I get that even if I have a good long life, I'm at least at like the halfway point. And that's scary because there's so much stuff I want to do, and instead I make YouTube videos. But today I want to talk about another part of aging that sucks, and that is our elder care system. Because at least in this country, we treat seniors like they are Depends diapers full of poop. Now, if you have no idea what I'm talking about, then honestly, I'm happy for you because that means that you haven't yet had to navigate this terrible system for yourself or loved one. But set that blissful ignorance aside because today we're gonna look at just how bad things are, the historical and political forces that got us here, and what this reality means for our future. Because the lack of foresight in how we care for seniors could have a domino effect that hurts all of us, even years before we get our AARP cards. Okay, so what exactly do I mean when I say that America treats old people like a Depends diaper full of poop the day after someone won a corn eating contest? Well, like so many societal problems that were basically ignored prior to 2020, the pandemic spotlighted just how badly nursing homes are failing their residents. In the first wave, 60,000 nursing home and long-term care facility residents died within just 5 months. At the pandemic's peak in 2020, more than 1,300 nursing homes had infection rates of 75% or more, and the Inspector General's report found that death rates were higher at for-profit facilities. And that makes sense because at the end of the day, a for-profit corporation's priority isn't taking care of people, it's making money. Now in practice, that meant that they didn't prioritize expenses like say better infection control measures and PPE during the pandemic. Or in the long term, the competitive pay necessary to attract and retain skilled nursing professionals and prevent staffing shortages. Now care work is hard work, so you can't blame people for not wanting to take these jobs or for burning out of the profession for minimum wage. You know, because at least if you're in a minimum wage job at say like Pizza Hut / Taco Bell off the I-80 freeway somewhere in Ohio, at the end of your shift you can make an enchilada pizza that you eat in your car before you drive home and sit in front of your couch and think, is this all it's for? Do I have this one limited life here on earth and I'm definitely gonna die and I don't know when I'm gonna die or how I'm gonna die, and my life is just spent like working for some company and consuming content and giving data, and like if God is real, is that what he made us for? And if God isn't real, then we've made this for ourselves, and why would we do that? But you could get the extra hot sauces from Taco Bell and put them all over the pizza and you'll forget all about that stuff. Okay, before we keep going, there's no ad on this video, so that's good for you, I think. Another thing that's good for you is we just launched a second channel. It's creatively titled Wisecrack 2, and it's where we're gonna put all of our videos to analyze film and TV and video games. We have a cool new set, a fun new style. I encourage you to check it out if you haven't already. There's a link in the description. Please subscribe once you're there and let us know what you think. If you want to support us in other ways, reminder that we have a Patreon community. When you head over there, you get all of our videos early without ads and a lot of other perks, so please do check that out. And if you just want to spend more time, I don't know, hanging out with us on YouTube, we stream every Monday and every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Pacific, and I would love to see you there. Okay, now let's get back to the show. Now, while there was already a staffing shortage problem, the pandemic made it way worse, and facilities still have not recovered. Now, nursing homes lost nearly 245,000 employees during COVID, and as of 2023, only regained about 20% of that workforce. So the people left doing these jobs are stretched way too thin, working with limited resources, all while not getting paid nearly enough. But even if these facilities were functioning perfectly, the system they operate within is still an absolute catastrophe, you know, because pretty much every American has had firsthand experience with our bureaucratic, confusing, expensive, rage-stroke-inducing healthcare system. Trying to get long-term elder care is almost impossible. Now, the median cost of a part-time home health aide is nearly $60,000 per year. Nursing homes start at nearly $100,000 per year, and assisted living homes can run you up to $10,000 per month. Now, that's prohibitively expensive for most people, but luckily, we have a massive federal health insurance program specifically for the elderly, right? You know the one. Well, the wild thing is that Medicare, despite being for the elderly, covers barely any long-term elder care, including everything from help with daily activities like bathing and eating to 24-hour nursing care, which is wild because today's 65-year-olds have a 70% chance of needing these services at some point. Now, Medicaid, the U.S. federal health insurance program for the poor, does cover long-term care, but only in a facility, not at-home care, and seniors are only eligible when they have almost zero assets left. So even for people who have managed to save a good amount of money for retirement, if they need long-term care, their best option is spending down all that money and going into poverty so they can get Medicaid coverage. So between the high cost and the huge insurance gaps, right now 80% of long-term care work is being done for free by unpaid care workers with zero medical training, most often family members, or in rarer cases, just really good friends. And in addition to caring for their loved ones, most of these unpaid care workers still have full-time careers. Many are forced to reduce work hours, take lower paying jobs with more flexibility, and even abandon their careers as they attempt to juggle everything at work and home. That's a huge burden and a ton of extra stress, on top of the inherent stress of caring for an aging parent. You gotta mush up all their food, show them how to use a remote, explain memes to them. Like this family, their thing is they go to Costco and they say, boom, that's what we do. Now, unsurprisingly, it's also terrible for caregivers' physical and mental health, leaving them with elevated risks of depression and anxiety, heart disease, and other serious ailments.
Sometimes it's hard when I go on Facebook or something and I see that my friends are kind of living normal lives. I decided to take a year off from medical school and spend the time with her. And I just feel like I want to grasp at every moment I can, really.
But the economic losses don't stop at no career growth this year for Catherine, because on top of doing all of this unpaid labor, according to AARP, family caregivers additionally spend an average of $7,242 annually on care expenses like home accommodations and medical equipment. According to Amy Goyer, the national family and caregiving expert at AARP, between providing care themselves and paying ever-mounting bills, family caregivers are the backbone of the long-term care system. And that would be completely unconscionable just about anywhere but here in the good old US of A, where it's hard to even get a Band-Aid without promising an insurance company your firstborn. Because when you have a kid, you gotta ask yourself questions like, if I get a skinned knee, am I going Band-Aid or my daughter? And this system is absolutely dystopian. So you might be asking, well, why isn't anyone stepping in to make it, if not good, at least not the worst? Well, how there's all the old white dudes in Congress who don't seem to care about, affordable health care or child care or fixing climate change or ending poverty? Well, it turns out they also maybe hate their fellow old white guys or old people of any race or gender. It's the one area where they don't discriminate. And look, I realize the politicians support seniors in a lot of other ways, that will get them votes, like promising tax cuts on Social Security benefits. But long-term care and meaningful financial support for seniors, as with most vital social policies that would hugely benefit people's lives, it's going to be a hard pass. Which is wild, as surveys show that a majority of Americans support policies that would fund long-term care, and yet politicians keep voting against them. Now, according to research economist Gal Wetstein, it's a similar set of issues that arises with childcare. And if you ask me, it seems like all this would make less toxic old white guy Franklin D. Roosevelt roll over in his grave. So, how did we get here? Well, here's the basic gist. Prior to 1935, elder care was largely dependent on family support. The only facilities available to seniors outside of your daughter's attic were public poorhouses offered through churches and charity organizations. Now, I'm sure that those places were no picnic, but at least you didn't have to pay $100,000 for the privilege. But once the Great Depression hit, the US government was like, oh shit, guys, I think we gotta step up here. And that's how we got Social Security, the first action to acknowledge that to some degree, states and the federal government ought to help financially support elderly people, though nonprofits and charities would continue to provide the bulk of funding for long-term care facilities. Now, until the 1950s, when for-profit companies started noticing the gap in the market and thought, hey, there's an opportunity to make some real money off grandma here. Now, aided by financing from the Federal Housing Authority and Small Business Administration loans, the long-term care market boomed. Then came the landmark year of 1965 when President Lyndon B. Johnson spearheaded a huge expansion of the social safety net. Now, this included the Older Americans Act, which reformed senior living and care by ensuring, among other things, adequate retirement incomes, physical and mental health care, suitable housing, and essential services like low-cost transportation. Now, that year also gave us Medicare and Medicaid, which was a huge policy shift that greatly expanded seniors' access to skilled nursing care and home care services. And thanks to Johnson's newly created Department of Housing and Urban Development, aka HUD, more facilities for long-term care services became available through the 60s, 70s, and 80s as well. Which, if you are pro old people's lives and dignity, this is all great. Even though Johnson was definitely no Roosevelt. He was historically pro civil rights and anti-poverty, but he was also notoriously pro having staff meetings in front of the bathroom while he pooped with the door open. But it wasn't until 1987 that someone in the federal government looked around and went, hey guys, since there are so many of these facilities now, maybe we should start paying some attention to who's running them and listening to all the people reporting the poor living conditions ranging from understaffing and insufficient care to straight up discrimination and elder abuse.
My fingers hurt.
Oh, well,
Now your back's gonna hurt because you just pulled landscaping duty.
So the Federal Nursing Home Reform Act created the first national minimum set of standards and care rights for people who lived in nursing homes. And when I say minimum, guys, I mean like minimum. The law's sanctions are harsh in theory, but in practice rarely enforced, which is why decades later, staffing standards aren't being met and the government offers very little oversight in cases of abuse and neglect or in how these facilities spend their money. Since 1987, we've seen periodic efforts to provide seniors with more living options and better care standards, but on a very incremental basis. Even the Affordable Care Act clearly hasn't solved the elder care crisis, despite bringing major reforms across healthcare, including improving Medicare plans and lowering seniors' prescription costs. Luckily, today, Congress is better at passing sweeping reforms than ever. The Biden administration's 2021 Build Back Better proposal included, among other things, expanded access to long-term care services under Medicaid, cutting costs of child care and elder care, and creating a national paid family leave and medical leave program to support home caregivers for child care and adult care. But, few of those proposals actually made it through Congress, and those that did still fell woefully short of being truly transformative. But regardless, then presidential candidate Kamala Harris made expanding Medicaid coverage for long-term home care a flagship campaign policy proposal. We're filming this the week before the election, so we don't know if they announced the president yet, who it is, so if at this part you're like, why don't they know that that's not the person or this is the person? Like, we just don't know, and we don't know. Now, Harris's proposal, which would allow more people to stay in their homes and have their care covered by Medicare, would be transformative for hundreds of thousands of seniors and for their families. And I really don't want to downplay that. It would be good, but we're at a point where any amount of reform would be huge. But it's still not enough to solve the elder care crisis. And even just fixing this one aspect likely faces an uphill battle in Congress. Okay, so let's recap. Elder care is bad and it's expensive. And also no one seems able to fix it or is even trying to fix it. And guess what? Everything's about to get a whole lot worse because there is a tidal wave of aging baby boomers coming our way, and they're singing Jimmy Buffett songs as they come towards us. Now, the boomers are a huge generation. By 2030, the U.S. will have more residents over 65 than children under 18, which has never happened before. To put this in scientific terms, it's like an arena full of Billy Joel fans plus a stadium full of Bruce Springsteen fans multiplied by the number of Eagles songs that your dad says are his favorite. Now, remember how even for Americans with some means, long-term care is still prohibitively expensive, and 80% of it is done by unpaid family members and better friends than my buddy Philip, who I'm just saying, he's a good guy, but I don't trust him to take care of me. More than 40% of boomers don't have any retirement savings at all. So that's a lot more people aging, a lot more people needing long-term care. And then here's where I get to most of you all watching this video. It's going to lead to a lot more young adults providing unpaid care work. It's going to be the worst thing that happened to millennials since we found out that listening to Sum 41 while rollerblading wasn't cool. Cancel your travel plans as you're going to be spending your time and money taking care of the same people who once sat you down at the dinner table to talk about the naked lady JPEGs they found on the living room PC. They were not your fault. A kid from youth group named Josh gave you a disk on it, and you put them in your gateway PC, and oh my God, there's a folder on the desktop, and mom and dad, I'm so sorry. I'll never do it again. More and more millennials and Gen Zers will be taking care of their parents earlier than they expect. If you thought your 30s were for traveling and your 40s were going to be for having a hot affair, well, your life plan is going to need a little revising. For some of us, it's already started with a double whammy of childcare and elder care responsibilities at the same time. These Americans are known as the sandwich generation because they're sandwiched between simultaneously caring for at least one child and one parent, which is increasingly common because Americans have kids later in life. Nearly 25% of American adults are sandwiched right now, including more than half of people in their 40s.
I was trying to heal and take care of a newborn and a 6-year-old.
As someone with a small child and parents in their 60s and 70s, I am what the French would call lay fucked. Now, for those of us who haven't had the pleasure of feeling like wrung out deli meat yet, here's the future that we have to look forward to.
Mary Moore has Alzheimer's. Her daughter, 33-year-old Kamaria Moore Hollis, like a growing number of people in her generation, has become a caregiver. And since then, Moore Hollis has become less like a daughter and more like a parent.
Constantly worrying and making sure my mom's okay. It can be difficult at times. It can be overwhelming sometimes, but it's all a part of it.
Now 33, Tara Lowy has been helping care for her mom for the last 7 years.
As with childcare, the bulk of unpaid elder care has historically fallen on women, and that's still the case. But we also live in an era where women are more likely than ever to have careers and be their family's main or even sole breadwinners, so they can't afford to quit or take time off. And their husbands can't help because we're busy starting bands with guys we met on Craigslist. Plus, millennials and Gen Zers are strapped after coming of age through the Great Recession and the pandemic, so they don't have as much savings to fall back on if they need to take time off to help a relative or, help pay for their care. And more of them will find themselves shouldering the burden of parental care alone because they have fewer siblings to rely on than previous generations. Now, AARP calculated that in 2010, there were more than 7 potential family caregivers for every person over 80. By 2030, the ratio will be 4-1, and by 2050, it'll be less than 3-1. So, I don't know, if you don't have retirement savings, just have just a ton of kids. Okay, so the elder care crisis isn't just about the elderly. It's going to have a major impact on every future generation's time, careers, ability to afford housing, ability to save for their own retirement, ability to have kids that can take care of them, which means that if nothing changes, the cycle will just keep continuing with every generation increasingly worse off. And the underlying logic here is pretty grim, and it seems to say something bigger about our society. Namely, that the elderly are viewed as largely disposable and unworthy of public resources. That helping them maintain a high quality of life isn't a priority. It gives the vibe of racehorses that are taken out back and shot once they can no longer produce.
That horse better win, or we're taking a trip to the glue factory, and he won't get to come.
All of this is economically and socially unsustainable. And there's no one quick fix. There's no one policy or reform that will magically make sure you don't have to cancel your travel plans for the next decade so that you can afford quality care for the folks who raised you. And look, guys, I know this one has been heavy, but, for better or worse, it's something we're all gonna have to deal with, whether we like it or not. But hey, in the meantime, feel free to share your solutions to this multifaceted and multi-generational issue in the comments, or at least just let us know what you think. A special thanks to all our subscribers. Please ring that bell if you haven't already. And a big shout out to all our patrons. There is a link to our Patreon page in the description. Check that out. It's a great way to support the channel while getting some pretty good perks. And do subscribe to Wisecrack 2 and look out for new videos there. In the meantime, let's just stay forever young or hope that we're secretly elves, because getting old sounds unfun. I'll see you next time.